President Trump breaks the Democrats. And now Schumer has a civil war on his hands. Good morning, Kuhner country. Okay, yeah, that's what I'm talking about, baby. The Democrats now are in absolute disarray. There is a political civil war that is now breaking out within the Democratic Party over the threat and the bluff by Schumer of a government shutdown. And here is now the absolute latest. As you know, it has been building throughout the entire week. What would Senate Democrats do? Would they be willing to not just go to the brink, but in fact go over the brink and shut the government down effective just after midnight tonight? 12:01 a.m. Saturday. So basically tomorrow, early in the morning, there would be a government shutdown if the Democrats decided to block the bill that was passed by the House, what's called the continuing resolution, a budget spending bill that would fund the government for 6 months until the end of the fiscal year, which is September 30th. The House passed it. The Senate now took it up. John Thune said, we're not going to make any changes. We're going to pass it as is. Now, to get this bill through the Senate, you need, to break the filibuster, you need 60 votes. It's called cloture. Schumer kept saying again and again, the Republicans may have 53, but they got to get to 60 to break the filibuster. And no Democrat is going to break rank. Schumer, in fact, even yesterday came out and said, we are going to hold the line, which means we are going to have a government shutdown. The Democrats were going to block the Republican spending plan. But then Schumer's bluff was called. The Republicans held the line. They said, fine, you want to shut it down? Shut it down. But this time, it's going to be you, Chuck you, Schumer. You and the Democrats are going to own this shutdown. And they were looping over and over how many times Schumer over the last 15, 20 years said the worst thing you can do to the country is a government shutdown. People are going to lose their jobs. Children are going to go hungry. Cancer research won't be funded. The elderly are going to be dying in their homes. It's going to be chaos, havoc, the end of the world. And they kept looping it and looping it and looping it. And as they were doing this, the Democrats were looking at the opinion polls. And they realized they had just boxed themselves into a corner. Because if they went ahead and shut the government down, the public was going to blame Schumer and they were going to blame the Democrats. And already with their popularity at rock bottom, this would send it, if it's possible, even lower. And so Schumer yesterday, and you can see the humiliation on his face, had to eat crow. And now he announced he's caving. He's going to vote for the Republican spending bill. Fetterman's going to vote for the Republican spending bill. They're going to get at least 8 Democrats to side with Republicans to break cloture and to have this bill passed before midnight tonight. Schumer caved and capitulated. It was the white flag of surrender. And my friends, the reaction from the radical left, the reaction from the progressives in the Democratic Party was fire and fury, because they had been building up this week this potential government shutdown as their chance to take on Donald Trump, that this man was torching the government. Elon was taking a chainsaw to the federal bureaucracy, cuts to Social Security, cuts to Medicare, cuts to Medicaid, people getting laid off, bureaucrats being fired. We can't have this. And so Trump was a dictator. And the way to confront him, according to these left-wing Democrats, was to fight him on the issue of the shutdown and the budget. Listen now. This is Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley saying now is the moment. It's now or never to stop the Trump so-called dictatorship. We need a government shutdown. Roll cut 20, Mike.
Well, the great majority of the caucus has some version of this. If you don't stop a bully by handing over your lunch money, and you don't stop Tyrant Trump by voting to give him more power. That is absolutely the wrong approach. There are others who say, you know, in a shutdown, the president may have more power than we've seen in any previous shutdown. There is a legitimate case to be made on both sides of this argument. But here's what I'm aware of, and that is in history, as you see institutions degrade in republics, when there's an authoritarian president, it is because the courts cave and you get an acquiescent legislature. And the best time to take on a tyrant is as early as possible. And this is the moment.
There you go. This is the moment. And it wasn't Merkley. It was one after another. Bernie said, shut it down. Elizabeth Warren, shut it down. Run down the whole list. The whole list. Ed Markey, shut it down. One after another after another. But leading the charge was Alexandria Fidel Castro Cortez. The Squad, her, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Ayanna Pressley, shut it down. And now they're turning on Schumer. Now the progressives say Schumer lied to them, Schumer betrayed them, he should have held the line, and that he blinked. He played a game of chicken with Trump and Senator John Thune, the Republican Senate Majority Leader, and Schumer blinked. Listen now to AOC saying she's furious. And not only is she furious, but many liberal progressive Democrats are furious along with her. Roll cut, this is her on CNN. Roll cut 17, Mike.
Chuck Schumer, I guess the Senate Democratic leader, your senator, said at this meeting that he is going to vote for cloture. He is going to vote to allow there to be a simple majority vote. You think that's wrong?
I believe that's a tremendous mistake. Yes.
Why?
I think, well, first and foremost, the American people, if anyone has held a town hall or has seen what has been happening in town halls, American people, whether they are Republicans, Independents, Democrats, are up in arms about Elon Musk and the actual gutting of federal agencies across the board. This continuing resolution codifies much of this chaos that Elon Musk is wreaking havoc on the federal government. It codifies many of those changes. It sacrifices and completely eliminates congressional authority in order to review these impulsive Trump tariffs that he's switching on and off.
And she wasn't finished. She wasn't finished. Saying this is going to go down as one of the biggest mistakes ever. That Schumer allowed this to happen is quote unquote unthinkable. Roll cut 17A. Mike.
For folks who are concerned about effectiveness in government, this Republican extreme spending bill removes all of the guardrails and all of the accountability measures to ensure that money is being spent in the way that Congress has directed for it to be spent. This turns the federal government into a slush fund for Donald Trump and Elon Musk. It sacrifices congressional authority, and it is deeply partisan. And so to me, it is almost unthinkable why Senate Democrats would vote to hand the few pieces of leverage that we have away for free when we've been sent here to protect Social Security, protect Medicaid, and protect Medicare.
She's going to primary him. Translation, what you just heard all this right now. By the way, all of it is lies. I mean, it's histrionics. I mean, it's just, they're making this stuff as they go along. I'll get it if you want. I'll tell you exactly what's in the CR. There were a few minor cuts. Actually, it spends $6 billion more on defense, $13 billion in cuts. Really, it keeps the current levels of spending pretty much what they are. So they're acting like it's cutting Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. It's all a lie. But let that go. That to me, forget that for a second. She's going to primary Chuck Schumer. And that's what was breaking on social media yesterday. The Democratic base, the activist base, the hard left now are saying Schumer betrayed them. They are done with Chuck U. Schumer, and they're urging AOC to launch a primary. And you heard it here first. If AOC primaries him, Schumer is going to lose. The Democrats are in a civil war. The Democrats now in disarray. 618 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, according now to multiple media reports, not only is Schumer obviously now backing down from his threat of a government shutdown, but in the lead up to his decision, he met with the Senate Democrat caucus behind closed doors. The yelling, the screaming, the shouting was so loud that reporters say they could literally hear it from beyond the closed doors. That Democrats were tearing into each other. And it was the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, to me the communist wing of the Democratic Party, that were livid, I mean furious with Schumer as he tried to say, we can't win this one. If it goes to a shutdown, the public will blame us. And if they blame us, it will be a massive victory for Donald Trump. On top of it all, if there's a government shutdown, he and Elon will then fire even more federal workers. So we're handing him victory after victory on a silver platter. And that did not go down easy. Now, I'm telling you this right now. You don't underestimate how angry many Democrats now are with Schumer. In their view, he has betrayed them. He has stabbed them in the back. And what you saw yesterday with those left-wing lunatics, okay, those crazy pro-Hamas, pro-Mahmoud Khalil activists who mobbed Trump Tower. I mean, that was another act of terrorism where they literally stormed into Trump Tower, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them, and basically occupied Trump Tower. And the New York police had to come in there and start making mass arrests and forcibly remove these people. That's the base that is now furious with Chuck Schumer. That's the base. Those are the hardcore fanatics. Okay, the Viva la Revolution. Those are the Bernie people, the AOC people that are now saying it's time for Chuck Schumer to go. You go on every so-called progressive far-left website. They are now calling, urging, advocating, almost pressuring AOC to launch a massive primary challenge against Chuck Schumer. Schumer now knows politically he's in big trouble. And the Democrats are fractured, splintered, and now at each other's throats. Listen now to Schumer. On MS Left BC, and they were not happy with him. MS Left BC, they were calling for his scalp, was trying to justify why he flip-flopped and caved on the shutdown. Roll cut 16, Mike.
What is the cost you see to the constitutional order of a shutdown that isn't already being done now?
It's a dramatic cost. Here's why, Chris. Under a shutdown, it is the executive branch, in this case Trump, Musk, Doge, and Vogt, who's head of the OMB, who we all know are authoritarians, vicious, nasty, who would have sole control over what is funded and what isn't. They get to determine what is a, quote, essential service. And they will just cut to smithereens, far greater than in the CR bill, which is a lousy bill. Far greater than that, what could be funded and what couldn't. And there's no recourse. You can't go to court. This is a decision totally in the executive branch. And so it would be devastating. Why is it that Elon Musk and Donald Trump want a government shutdown? So they can take control of the government and do their vicious, horrible things. They could cut half the government.
Yeah, we're right. Yeah, they're going to cut half the government. Yeah, during a so-called shutdown. Yeah, right. You see, so what he's trying to sell, and they're not buying it, is, well, we had two options, a Hobson's choice, and they were both bad. So either we let the Republicans pass this bill, and oh my God, they're going to cut this, and they're cutting that, and they're cutting this, and the sky's going to fall. Or we go to a government shutdown. But he says the shutdown, it would hurt us even more. Chris, it would hurt us even more. So we just got to swallow this one, Chris. And now listen to this. He thinks by talking tough. Remember, he's the guy that kept thumping his chest all week. There's going to be a shutdown. This is outrageous. This will not stand. We're going to go to war with Donald Trump. We're willing to die on this hill. Now, not so much. So now, he's got to try to do a tough guy routine. And he thinks if he can call Republicans nasty, vicious names, that this will somehow save his leadership of the Democratic Party. In other words, put lipstick on a pig. But you can put lipstick on a pig. It's still a pig. Listen now to Schumer now, calling Republicans bastards. Roll cut 15, Mike.
To have the conflict on the best ground we have, summed up in a sentence, that they're making the middle class pay for tax cuts for billionaires, it's much, much better not to be in the middle of a shutdown, which to divert people from the number one issue we have against these bastards, these people, which is not only all these cuts, but they're ruining democracy.
He's trying to save face. And he can call them bastards. He can start dropping the F-bomb. He can call them any name. He can call Republicans any name he wants. The fact of the matter is, he caved. He caved. He folded like a cheap suit. And now there's going to be hell to pay. The left is up in arms. The media doesn't know what to do. The Democrats are in utter disarray. They're at each other's throats. There is a civil war now between the establishment of the Democratic Party, people like Schumer, people like Pelosi, and the Bernies, the AOCs, the squad. Chuck Schumer, politically, is now, in my view, dead man walking. If AOC wants to primary him, she can take him out. I'm not saying she's going to win a general election in New York. That may be tougher for her because she's nutty as a fruitcake. But in a Democratic primary where the Bills in Sudbury and the Franks in Gloucester have outsized influence and power, my money would be on AOC. And so my question to you now, are the Democrats politically a finished and spent force? Your calls next. 6:33 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer, 617-266 6868 is the number. Okay. I want you to listen now. This is Mad Max, Congresswoman Maxine Waters. And she was at the House Black Caucus Leadership Retreat. And man, oh man, she wanted a government shutdown. She wasn't the only one. Almost all of the Congressional Black Caucus wanted a shutdown as well. And she's saying now Trump is a dictator. He's becoming a Führer, a Hitler, and civil war. Listen to this. Civil war may be coming. We have to fight him now or else it's too late. Roll cut 19. Mike.
What does he do in gathering all of this power? I think perhaps it is about gathering the power and bringing us to our knees so that when he changes America with his vision, that we will be begging for crumbs, basically, because that's all he will be offering. Now, all of that worries me, but I'm going to tell you what I'm worried about. We have great responsibilities continuing to fight for democracy and to strengthen democracy and to take care of the least of these. Not only black people, we take care of everybody with our votes. Amen. I'm worried that Trump is on the edge of creating a civil war. He alluded to it more than once. He alluded to the fact that if he did not get reelected, that there could be a civil war.
I swear the woman is, she belongs in a loony bin. I mean, but my point is, look, these are the crazies that drive the Democrat. That's their base. This is like, these are the Bills in Sudbury and the Bens in North Andover and the Franks in Gloucester. And those are the people that, support him, vote for him, campaign for him, knock on doors for him, help steal elections for him. So they're now at Schumer's throat. And they see this, and I think on this one, stop clock is right twice a day. They see this as a fundamental betrayal by Chucky. That Chuck U. Schumer surrendered. Chuck U. lost his spine. He talked a big game. He said he was ready for a shutdown. He got everybody ready for a shutdown. And then he just blinked. And now, my friends, the Democrats are going to be, there's going to be a reckoning. Now the Democrats are really at loggerheads. And they're starting to tear each other apart. So when you've got Democrat after Democrat, donor after donor, saying Schumer's got to go, and if he won't go, how does Senator Alexandria Fidel Castro Cortez sound? You got problems. So I want to ask all of you. It is the Kuhner Country poll question of the day. Du jour, as the French would say, sponsored by Mario's. Mario's quality roofing, siding, and windows. Now that Chuck Schumer and the Senate Democrats are not going to block the Republican funding bill, which averts a shutdown, are the Democrats toothless? Are they now toothless? Are they politically? I'm not talking about culturally or in the media or, and I'm going to get to this right now, in the federal judiciary. But in Congress, are the Democrats now utterly toothless? Are they now politically impotent? A, yes. B, no. You can vote on our webpage, wrko.com/Kuhner, wrko.com/Kuhner, KUHN as in national ER. As always, you can vote via X. My handle there, all one word, at the Kuhner Report, KUHN as in national ER. Okay. to me, if I was to vote in this poll, I would vote A. After what we've just seen this week, especially in the last 24 to 48 hours, that circus show, that clown show. So now think about it. It shows you what a bunch of liars the people like Chuck Schumer are. Again, I have no truck for AOC. I don't care for the Squad or Bernie or Maxine Waters or Elizabeth Warren or, all of these crazy left-wingers. But there is a logic to their position, insane and irrational as it is, which is if Trump is Hitler and he's leading us now to a dictatorship and we may never come back, and God knows civil war and who knows what else he's going to, death camps and concentration camps and, he's cutting everything and we're all going to die. Well, then why fund him? I mean, seriously, why fund him? So in other words, there is a certain logic to their insanity. There is a rhyme and a reason to their madness, right? Which is, hey, look, this guy is going to destroy everything. He's destroying America, our democracy, the Constitution, everything. This is the Fourth Reich. Well, you don't fund the Fourth Reich. You don't fund Donald Trump. So you shut the government down and you try to alert the country to the peril of what who Donald Trump is. I'm thinking like them now. It's hard, but I'm trying to, you can say, well, I can kind of see the argument. What is Schumer's argument now? He's Hitler. He's authoritarian. He's a threat to democracy. He's going to cut Social Security. Old ladies are going to die. He's going to cut Medicare. Old people won't get, be able to see the doctor. He's getting rid of Medicaid. Poor people now aren't going to get health insurance. So it's fear-mongering, hysteria, panic porn, but we're not going to shut the government down. Well, if he's Hitler, you defund Hitler. You take away his money. You take a stand. So it exposes and unmasks what a phony and a fraud and a liar Chuck Schumer is. And so many around him. Okay? So I think politically now, he's got zero credibility. None. He's got none with his party. He's got none with his base. And they're going to eat him alive. As Dave, our Western PA constitutionalist correspondent, messaged me about maybe 15 minutes ago. Jeff, this is now cannibalism on the left. They're eating their own. And I love it. Honestly, I love it. To me, this is a victory. This is a huge victory. If the enemy is now tearing into each other, give me the popcorn and let's watch the show. This only makes Trump stronger. This only makes his agenda stronger. And the more divided and fractured the Democrats are, the better it is for the country, the better it is for Trump, the better it is for us. But, this is why now the Democrats are relying not on Schumer, not on Hakeem Jeffries, not on Congress to stop Trump. Now they're relying on the judiciary, the judicial branch. And I've got a story for you. Holy mackerel, you got to hear it. You want to talk about an insurrection? You want to talk about a revolt? I've got that next. 6:49 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, my wonderful son, Ashton, is listening. He does every morning. Hey, by the way, Ava listens to the show as well on her way to school. And anyway, I just want to wish him a very happy birthday today. My little boy is now 15. Today he is 15 years old. And already he's like, hey, Dad, when can I get my driver's license? Dad, when am I going to get my learner's permit? Dad, when are you going to buy me a car? I'm like, hey, whoa, Junior. Hey, whoa, slow down. Take it easy. So, actually, we're going to celebrate it officially tomorrow, but today is his birthday. So, honestly, to my son, happy birthday, Ashton. Daddy loves you very, very much, and I'm very proud of you. So, enjoy your birthday, son. 617-266-6868. Okay. At least for me, this is a little bit of a birthday gift. I know it's Ashton's birthday, but, hey, I'll take the gift. Schumer now capitulates, surrenders on a government shutdown. He's got egg all over his face. And now he's facing a rebellion, a serious rebellion among the left-wing progressives in his own party. And there is now open talk that AOC will primary him, and many Schumer loyalists are worried. They don't know if he can beat her. Is this now the end of Chuck U. Schumer? And is this now the beginning of a political civil war within the Democratic Party? 617-266-6868. And let me throw this super quick log on the fire. Some of you wanted a shutdown. Many of you are saying, Jeff, really, a shutdown doesn't bother me. You felt it would give Trump and Elon even more of an opportunity to maybe start firing more of these federal bureaucrats and federal workers to help shrink the size of government and get even rid of more waste, fraud, and abuse. That's number one. And number two, a shutdown would have decimated the Democrats politically. I mean, every day the shutdown went on, it would be Schumer's shutdown. Schumer shutdown day after day after day. It would have been politically a nightmare for Schumer and the Dems. So the sense I get from the way, just looking at the texts and the emails, is many of you are like, I kind of wish they did it, Jeff. To be honest, it would have been their political Waterloo. It would have been their end. So how do you feel about it? That the shutdown has been averted? You like it? Don't like it? 617-266-6868. Okay, lines are blazing. Mark in Waltham. Thanks for holding, Mark, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. I just wanted to say a few things that are slightly off topic, but the thing that troubles me that is similar to what happened in his first term is that these obscure judges from nowhere are able to stop the president and what he wants to do. They're unelected officials, and Trump was elected by 77 million people. This doesn't make sense to me how the president of the United States can be overruled by some lower circuit judge. And the thing that really gets me is that why is every federal employee or state employee so valuable, so precious that no one can ever be let go, but yet in the private sector, a company can lay off thousands of people at a time. I'm talking about non-union jobs. Where's the lawyer then saying, well, you can't lay these people off in the private sector in your company? So why is their jobs more valuable than mine? And when you lose your job, you have to suck it up and go find another job. You have no recourse. So I don't understand this whole process. Lastly, I live between a neighbor on either side. One works for the state and one works for the federal. And most of the time they're home. They're not even working. So it's just troubling, this whole situation, that the whole country should have be embracing saving money and reducing debt, but yet they fight it. So I don't really understand what the Democratic Party stands for. Thank you.
Mark, you're a genius. I'm telling you. I don't know if anyone's ever told you, but I'm telling you, you're a genius. Have you ever measured your IQ? I'm just curious.
No. It's average.
You're definitely.
Thank you.
I'm telling you, you're 140 or above, which is like the top 1%. You're guaranteed. You're definitely. I mean, you're 140 and above. You are right on every single count. Your observations are spot on. Look, the judicial branch is not the executive branch. and I'm going to get to this. I got a big story, but I want to take some calls. You're right. The opposition now, the real opposition, okay? I'm not talking about yelling in the streets and occupying Trump Tower, and disgusting as it is, but real opposition, like blocking Trump's agenda. It's coming now from the lower courts. And you're right. It's these rogue, activist, far-left judges, these Democrat hacks, who think that somehow they control the White House, they control the executive, they control the president, and that your judicial branch can usurp the executive branch. They're out of control. They're out of control. You got this judge, I'm going to get to it, I promise, but in one sentence, literally has now ordered, a Clinton judge has now ordered Trump to rehire the tens and tens and tens of thousands of probationary federal workers that he's fired. So they're basically telling him, you can't fire people. What? You're telling me that the president of the United States, the head of the executive branch, cannot fire people in the executive branch? Who died and made you God? So this is a clear violation of separation of powers. This is clear judicial activism. And they're clearly now trying to nullify, they're trying to gut the executive branch and Trump's power as president. There's no question. So I'm going to get to, it's an unbelievable ruling. So you're right. Now it's coming from these lower court judges, most of whom no one's ever heard of. The bigger point that I want to touch on right now is I keep seeing everybody in the media and these Democrats going on about, these federal workers, they got fired. No. And you nailed it. Do you know how many times I've been caught up in layoffs? How many times over my long career? How many times in the private sector people are laid off all the time? So why can't we fire federal workers? Like, I'm sorry, what are they, a privileged class? Did I miss the memo? It's a job for life? You can never be touched? Like, what are you, the new aristocracy? You're of the manner born? Like, but that's how they're treating them. Like, it's like, in academia, like it's tenure. Like, well, no, you can't touch them. We're a federal employee. They can't be fired. So in the private sector, people are let go. People are laid off all the time. And by the way, even very good employees, even people who get great performance reviews, when the accountants come in and they look at the books, they just like, okay, cut this department, just cut it completely, 50% across the board, just cut them. So in the private sector, we get laid off all the time. And let me just say this. When they shut the economy down, how many businesses did they shutter? How many businesses did they close down? How many people's jobs? How many people were laid off? Or when they tried to force us to take the jab. Remember that? No jab, no job. You remember that? And how many nurses lost their jobs? How many teachers lost their jobs? Police officers, firefighters, corrections officers. How many people in the military were let go and kicked out because they wouldn't take the jab? Did you see any compassion from the Democrats? Did you see the media? You can't do this. No, it's so unfair. They loved it. They loved it. They were cheering it on. So, you see, when it came to the jab, fire people. When you're in the private sector, fire people. But when it comes to the swamp, to the federal bureaucracy, suddenly they're untouchable. They're untouchable. Now, look, here. Every company I've been at, including iHeart, and I love iHeart, please don't take this the wrong way, but iHeart's had layoffs. Why? They got to restructure. They've got to cut debt. They got to cut waste and fraud. So what I'm saying is we've dealt with the stress. Now, luckily, the axe didn't fall on us. And honestly, a big reason is this incredible audience. Because we have such a big audience, which helps us bring revenue, add revenue, which keeps us profitable. And so when the accountants come in, they're like, well, no, Kuhner's bringing in the money. So that's honestly because of you. All right. I'm being candid. But people get laid off. That's life. It's not nice. Of course it's not nice. I've been laid off. It's not nice. But, as Sandy said to me, I said, Sandy, you sound like Yoda today. Because honestly, she was very wise at our pre-show production meeting. She said, my father taught me a job is not for life. If you're miserable at a job, leave. If you're unhappy at a job, leave. Or if you have the misfortune to lose a job, you can always find another job. And it's true. Seriously, it's true. So, doors have been shut in my face. Other doors end up being opened. Again, it's turbulent. It's stressful. It's not nice. I understand. But welcome to the real world. You tell me, how many times have you had to be laid off? Or the threat of a layoff? And through no fault of your own. What do? You pick yourself up by the bootstraps and you get a job. And by the way, these people are all getting severance until September. September. Did you ever get severance? Did you ever get a 6-month severance to September? The way they are? And last thing, I'm not saying all of them. There are some very good people, I know that, who work in the bureaucracy. No question. Okay? No question. But let's be honest. There's a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse. I can't tell you how many people have been emailing me now for weeks and weeks. Jeff, please don't mention my name, but I work for this department. I work for that department. I work for that agency. Boy, oh boy, they could cut 50, 60%. We'd be leaner, meaner, more efficient. That's just a fact. So, I'm sorry. But if you serve at the discretion of the president and your salaries are from us, the taxpayer. If you're redundant or if you're not competent or if you're really not productive, you got to go. And if you have any skills and any talent, you'll find another job in the private sector. But working for the government doesn't mean you have a job for life. I'm sorry. It just doesn't work that way, and it shouldn't work that way. Agree, disagree, 617-266-6868. Jack in Tewksbury. Thanks for holding, Jack, and welcome.
Thank you, Jeff. Jeff, the Democrats don't do anything without focus groups, so they know how bad it looks after that address by Trump to Congress. They are in trouble. They know it. Chuck's trying to hold. If you look at everything, they're on the upside. They're on the downside of everything, 80-20, 76-24. They know how bad it is. They don't need anybody else to tell them. They're trying to hold together what they got left because they don't have to worry about the radicals because the radicals are always going to be on their side. They're trying to squeeze back some of those people that have fallen over and starting to wake up. That's what they're afraid of losing because they won't get them back. They'll never lose the radicals. And Nancy Pelosi used up all her political capital that she had left to take Joe Biden down, so she can't hold the House anymore. She's done. As the other guy late at night, Jesse Kelly, said, the aged lion has been challenged and beaten by a younger one. So she's done. So her iron grip that used to keep everything together is gone, and now you'll see everything fracturing. And I think Schumer's trying to do the same thing, but he hasn't got the political capital to hold anything together because there's too many tapes of him out there. I'm against the shutdown. I'm for the shutdown. It's just, it's killing them, Jeff. It's killing them.
Well, Jack, look, you really, I think you put your finger on the pulse of the issue. Look, there's no question now. There's a new wave of Democrats coming up, and they're very radical. They're very intolerant. They're very woke, forgive me. They are clearly believing now that they own the Democratic Party. And the old guard, the Schumers, the Pelosi's, their days are numbered. You can see that. And I think Schumer made a big mistake. This week, it was the biggest political mistake of his career. I'm just giving you a straight political analysis. Okay, I can't stand the guy. I think he's scum. Absolute scum. But the fact is, you don't rile up your base. You don't get expectations so high and tell them and go on, CNN and MSNBC and give speech after speech how Trump is a dictator and Trump is a fascist and Trump's going to get grandma killed and Trump is going to cut every program under the sun and we're all going to die and I'm going to stop him and we're going to fight him with a shutdown and we're going to beat him and we're going to take this fight to the American people, and if it's a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, he's willing to shut the thing down because, hey, this is it. We've got to take our stand. And then at the last hour, at the midnight hour, turn around and say, sorry, we gotta avert the shutdown, because the shutdown would be worse than allowing the budget and the government to be funded until September 30th. He comes across, number one, as weak, but more importantly now, to his own people, as an absolute hypocrite, phony, and fraud. They don't respect him anymore. They're seeing him now for what we've seen for decades. He's a liar and a charlatan. And this is his moment. I'm telling you, this is the moment that he crossed the Rubicon. And there's now no going back. There's no going back. Now, he knows he's vulnerable. That's why he's calling Republicans bastards, and he can insult them till the cows come home. The fact of the matter is, he is now exposed to a primary on his left flank. And they love AOC in New York City. The activists love her. And, they did the same thing for Markey here in Massachusetts. Remember when he went up against Kennedy in that Senate primary? And everybody said, well, it's Kennedy. It's the Democrat establishment. It's the legacy of the Democratic Party. Nobody beats a Kennedy. And this loser, this ice cream truck driver, beat him because he had the base, these activists behind him. She's got the activists. She's got the crazies behind her. And Schumer may not be able to fend them off. Pelosi went down. Schumer now is on the verge of being toppled. Jack, final word to you.
Jeff, I agree. It is the crazies. It is the activists. Let's just hope the activists don't get too violent, because that's my other fear. Because the words they're using, once again, is getting worse and worse, and they're ramping up that rhetoric, and that makes me nervous, again, for the president's life, for Elon's life. Elon has mentioned it himself. How far can he push before he gets assassinated? He said it on Joe Rogan's podcast. That's his biggest fear, because he doesn't want to die. How far can he push? That's the question.
You're right, and for the country. I'm really, these are revolutionary socialists and Marxists. This is Bernie. Bernie's a Bolshevik. Bernie is a stone-cold communist. So is Elizabeth Warren. So is AOC. So is Ayanna Pressley. So is Ilhan Omar. So is Rashida Tlaib. I mean, these are very politically extreme, dangerous people. And they don't care if they burn the country to the ground. So you're dealing now with violent revolutionaries. And I'm telling you, it was the Pelosi's and the Schumers that brought them in. It reminds me of the French Revolution. I mean, history keeps repeating itself. And they think, no, we can control them. We can co-opt them. No. Hey, they raise a ton of money. No, man, they go door to door. You should see them. Oh, my God, they're crazy. Oh, they're fanatics. They'll put in mailers. Oh, they'll steal votes for us. Oh, my God, they'll do anything we ask them to do. But like Frankenstein's monster, they end up devouring you. And that's what's starting to happen. And this new leadership, they have no allegiance to America, no allegiance to the Constitution, no allegiance to civil decency whatsoever. So we'll see what happens. I'm with you, Jack. 617-266-6868. But the old guard now is falling. The Democrat old guard is falling. And these radical, woke progressives, okay, socialists, communists, are now rising. 617-266-6868. How much time left, Mike? Okay. Very quick reset. I want to take more calls on the other side. Schumer now averts a government shutdown. He said he was going to shut it down. Now he does a complete 180. He says the Democrats will fund the Republican spending bill, the continuing resolution as it's called, funding the government all the way to September 30th. Is this the end of Chuck Schumer? And federal workers and employees of the federal government being laid off. Are they untouchable? Should they be untouchable? Why is it that it's a crisis if a federal bureaucrat gets fired, but it's not a national crisis if you or I get fired? Your calls next. 718 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. A really good email that I got from Andrea. Won't mention her last name always, obviously. I like to keep people's identity safe. So she writes, "Hi, Jeff. Not only did Joe Biden and his administration fire all of those who wouldn't take the shot, doctors, nurses, pilots, air traffic controllers, people who actually contribute to the country, but he shut down the oil industry and fired thousands of people. Andrea, thank you for reminding me. I forgot about that. You're absolutely correct. 1,000%. When he shut down the Keystone XL pipeline, how many jobs did he kill? And those were good paying, working class, blue collar jobs. I mean, the kind of job you can raise a family with, pay the bills, the groceries, send your kids to college. They didn't cry. The media didn't cry. Nobody was running around, oh my God, how are they going to survive? They're going to die. They're going to die. They said, blank you. Get another job. So I'm sorry. So, of course, I don't want to see anybody lose a job. But that's life. People lose jobs. Move on. And, why Sandy, Yoda, there's always another job. There's always another job. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, super quick. I want to read this from Marianne, who listens to the show but lives in Florida. Jeff, this job that I have now, where have I been for almost 11 years? I was laid off from my previous job managing a medical office because he was bringing in a family friend that worked for his dad to run his office at that time because his dad was closing his business. Okay, in other words, nepotism. So Marianne, who was, I'm telling you, a great worker, suddenly is out of a job because they brought in a family friend. Now, as she continues, I was out of work for over a year before I landed this job. I had no recourse, no severance. A layoff is a layoff. But understand, these politicians are never laid off because they keep getting reelected and reelected. Look at the ages and the number of years a lot of these people have been in office. No, it's true. They've been there forever. Forever. They're in their 80s. They're in their 90s. I mean, you know, remember Dianne Feinstein when they would wheel her in? Sandy, she had to be, what, 90? What was she? She was, I think, in her 90s? She was in her 90s. Full-blown Alzheimer's. I mean, gone. Didn't know her own name. And wheel her in, wheel her out, and it's like, what does it take to get somebody, to fire somebody, to get rid of somebody there? And so Marianne says, Jeff, I am all for term limits. I don't believe our founding fathers wanted career politicians or career bureaucrats. You're completely right, Marianne. So if people in the private sector have to get laid off and are laid off and they have to find other work or get retrained or do what they have to do, I'm sorry. Why can't federal bureaucrats? What makes them so special? 617-266-6868. Agree, disagree? Okay, let's go back to the blazing phone lines. Rob in Dedham. Thanks for holding, Rob, and welcome.
Jeff. I'm outside a construction area right now. There's a tractor going by. I do apologize. You know, the greatest thing happened last night by Chuck Schumer caving, but he still needs X number of senators to get this past cloture, you know. So we don't know who's doing what. But the better thing, Jeff, is if this thing comes out, it's got to go through, obviously, all the other moves and the whole mess there. But it has one thing that I forgot all about. With the Office of Budget and Management, with Russ Vought, they get to check this thing out one more time, and they can start cutting there. They're waiting for Doge to keep on going, so they can keep on cutting there. And then Trump's going to go impoundment, so it can't go back to the Senate or the House. This is fantastic. Talking about gas, no brakes. This is great.
Yeah, no, Rob, I agree with you. And look, you can just see now the Democrats they're exhausted. There's nothing left in the tank. They are now openly squabbling with each other. It's getting to the point now. Look, I've never seen hate like this against Chuck Schumer. I've never seen it. They hate him. If it's possible, Rob, they hate him now almost as much as they hate Elon or Trump. And so they're either cannibalizing each other. And this is going to give Trump and Musk and Doge a big opening. We can cut even more. And I say, don't stop. Keep going. Keep going. And ignore these lower court judges. Just ignore them. Force them to take it to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court's going to side with Trump and Elon. I guarantee it. So just say, fine, you made your ruling. We're not going to abide by it. You don't like it? Appeal. Take it to the Supreme Court. Keep going. Don't stop. It's shock and awe. This is like Patton taking Berlin. Just keep going. Don't stop. Keep grinding up more territory. Keep advancing. Keep pushing on every front. Rob, agree, disagree?
Keep that. And the thing about this is, Jeff, by forcing all these judges, it's going to go to the Supreme Court no matter what happens. But the whole thing about this is that Trump has got his game plan, and the people have just got to relax in the stock market. It's inflated by 30%. All the people that have taken the money out are all liberals, and all the people that are really going crazy are those 5 stocks that are for that.
Yeah, no, you're right. No, those are these big AI tech stocks that have been overvalued for a long time. The market was due for a correction. And trust me, under Trump, it's going to boom again. Everybody just stay patient. 7:33 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, this is but you can text us 70470. This is a really good text from 617. Jeff, it's true. It's completely true. Notice when Schumer, I played the cuts of Schumer, but it doesn't matter. It can be Schumer, AOC, Bernie, Hakeem Jeffries. It doesn't matter. It's always the American people oppose Trump on this. They oppose his cuts, his Doge cuts. They oppose his tariffs. They oppose his border security policy. They oppose whatever he does. His executive orders preventing men from competing in women's sports, whatever it is. 70% of the American people are against them. So they're trying to create this illusion that somehow there's voter remorse. That the voters are like, oh, they're so miserable with Trump. They wish they hadn't voted for him. Oh, the country's, it's in chaos. Everything's coming apart. The stock market's crashing. The economy's crashing. Inflation is out of control. People are angry. People are upset. When in fact, not only did he win a massive mandate, poll after poll shows the American people at 70-30, even 80-20 on almost every issue that Trump is backing and supporting. And you had the latest inflation report. Inflation's going down. So again, it's another manufactured so-called crisis. They're creating hysteria and fear where none exist. But I want to read, because I think the text nails it. Jeff, what puzzles me is when the Democrats are giving live interviews, saying things like, quote, the American people don't approve of this, unquote, etc. Hey, dummy. 70% of the Americans voted against you and what you stand for. They voted for Trump and his agenda. Laugh out loud. Jeff, why do these people still think they represent we the people? They are delusional and still think they're relevant. Bingo. And that after Schumer yesterday caving, because I'm telling you, they did focus polls, and they thought, well, the people they're up in arms. It's just a rebellion. They want to stop the Trump dictatorship. Viva la resistance! And they're like, they want us to fund the government? So they don't want us to shut it down? They don't want us to obstruct Trump. Oh, we're going to get our heads handed to us. It's time to cave. Sorry, where's the white flag? That's what Chucky was asking last night. Where is the white flag? We've got to put up the white flag of surrender. Can somebody find that white flag? 617-266-6868 is the number. John in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, John, and welcome.
Thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure, John.
I wanted to just tell you, I'll never forget Ashton Kuhner's birthday. Not because it's Pi Day and the 314 people are the Pi Day people, but it's also my wife's birthday. So every time I think about her birthday, I'll say, oh, yeah, it's Ashton Kuhner's birthday, too.
Thank you.
I'll think of little Ashton. Well, he's not little. He's probably a grown man. But
listen, Ashton now I think could take me. I mean, that's how big he's getting.
That's the way it goes. But I wanted to say, you're talking about the divisions in the Democratic Party. I had a discussion with my father-in-law prior to the 20 election, and I thought if Trump wins this one, if he gets reelected, I predicted, we were having a discussion, I said, I think you're going to see the end of the Democratic Party. I think it's going to split into a full third party. And somehow Joe Biden got 85 million votes, as you remember. But I think what you're starting to see, and I'm going to predict it, I think it's starting to come about after this election. I don't know how long it'll take, but I think we're seeing the seeds of the end of the Democratic Party, which, speaking of birthdays, I believe it might have been their 200th birthday, the Democratic Party, if you remember, the party born of Andrew Jackson, who I call one of America's, maybe history's, greatest villains. He was a bad guy, in my opinion. The party of slavery, the party of Calhoun, you can go down the line. I think they just celebrated their 200th birthday. And I think I'm going to predict that their run is coming to an end with this election and what's going on.
I would not bet against you, John. I'm telling you, I think you're right. Now, it may be, this election, next election, it's kind of tough to predict exactly how these things are going to work out. But they're in their death throes now. And Trump is, I think, brilliantly outfoxed them. He's outmaneuvered them. What he's done is he's made the country a 70-30, and in many cases now an 80-20 country. And he's boxed the Democrats in. And that 20%, that's the AOCs. That's the Bernies. That's the Ayanna Presleys, the Ilhan Omars, the Rashida Tlaibs, the Elizabeth Warrens, the Gavin Newsoms. That's the Pritzkers, the governor of Illinois, Kathy Hochul up in New York. That's that 20%. And the 20% is now looking to completely take over the leadership of the Democratic Party. Like, I can't stand them. Don't get me wrong, okay? Please. I'm not praising them. But Pelosi, like Bill Clinton, even Joe Biden, they realized they had to lie to do it, but we can't just rely on this fanatical 20% base. We've got to pretend to try to bring in more moderate, centrist voters, more middle-of-the-road voters, center-left voters. No, not these people. These are hardcore revolutionaries. I mean, they're the burn it down crowd. When they take over full leadership of the congressional Democrats and they put up another Kamala Harris in 2028 and that person goes down in flames, I think the party's finished. If you're down to 20%, you're done. And I think you're right. I think a third party will emerge because they'll realize the Democrats, what the Democrats truly are now under these idiots, they are the Communist Democrat Party of America. They are a full-blown Marxist, far-left communist party. And communism never gets more than 15-20%. Never. So they're now, I mean, they've boxed themselves in. And I agree with you, John. There's no way out. And look, just as a horse race, you're looking at a guy like Chuck Schumer, 50 years in politics, a man who's been Senate Majority Leader, Senate Minority Leader, who's been instrumental in the Democrats, having power for decades and decades and decades. And he's going to get destroyed, most likely in a primary, by this young punk, this barista, who sounds like an absolute ditz every time she opens her mouth. Seriously, by this economic illiterate, an admirer of Fidel Castro, and she's going to topple him. The Democrat old guard is done. John, they're done. And when they go down, their party goes down. John, thank you very much for that call. Really perceptive call. 617-266-6868. Agree, disagree, all of your calls. Next. 7:49 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, liberalism's worst nightmare. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, very quickly, because the lines are screaming. But this is obviously the big story. And I've been teasing it long enough. Most of you pretty much know the outlines of it. But here is exactly now what is taking place. With the Democrats now politically, not just in disarray, but in many ways, as Sandy put it, toothless, and they're politically now impotent, fractured, splintered, in some ways now at war with each other. The opposition to Trump, and I don't mean on the streets or protests or the terrorism that we're watching, but in terms of putting up roadblocks, obstacles, real obstacles, trying to block his agenda, is coming from the deep state, and in particular from the judiciary. And listen now to this, okay? It's woke, liberal, Democrat hacks posing as judges who are issuing one outrageous, illegal, unconstitutional ruling after another. Basically, everything Trump has done, lower court judges, either appointed by Biden, Obama, or Clinton, are blocking him. Listen now to the latest outrage. A Clinton-appointed U.S. district judge, William Alsup, now says that the Trump administration illegally fired thousands of probationary federal government employees. And not only did he say this was illegal to get rid of them. Now remember, these are employees on probation. They're on probation. You join the federal government, you join the federal workforce, there is a 1-year probationary period. Now, what is really outrageous about this ruling is not only is he saying it was illegal to fire them, which is ridiculous, but then he ordered the Trump administration to rehire tens of thousands of these fired probationary employees, in particular in 6 federal agencies: Veterans Affairs, Department of Defense, Energy, Treasury, the Interior, and Agriculture. And here's what he wrote. It is part of his decision. Quote, and he blasted Trump. I mean, he excoriated the Trump administration. Quote, it is a sad day. This guy's unbelievable. When our government would fire some good employee and say it was based on performance when they know good and well that's a lie. Judge Alsup wrote, that should not have been done in our country. It was a sham in order to avoid statutory requirements. Now, just super quick, on the merits itself, okay, before we get to the bigger philosophical picture, on the merits itself, as most people know, especially if you work in the federal government, they explicitly tell you when you're hired and you're in your, 1-year probationary period, you can be fired any day, any time, for whatever reason. For whatever reason. They don't have to give you a reason. And it's not up to some judge to decide whether it's a justifiable reason or a legitimate reason. It doesn't matter. When you're in your probationary period, they could let you go for whatever reason. Now, this clown knows this. He knows it. But he's illegally, extra-constitutionally making a ruling that he knows he has no business making just to block and stop Trump. Now, that's point number one. Point number two, and this is to me the heart of the issue, who the hell is this judge? You're now going to order the executive branch? You're going to order the President of the United States to rehire thousands of people that he doesn't want and that he has the full constitutional authority and power to fire? I'm sorry. When has the executive branch stopped being the executive branch? Since when did the judicial branch suddenly now usurp and take over and take control of the entire executive branch? Look, if Alsup wants to decide whether employees should be fired or not in the Department of, I don't know, Treasury or Defense or Agriculture or the Interior or whatever, then run for president. And then if you become president of the United States, you get to decide which employees work in what agencies. But buddy, nobody elected you president of the United States. He's an unaccountable, unelected judge who literally is usurping the authority of the President of the United States, violating separation of powers. And now we're going to so micromanage the president that he can't fire anybody in the federal government or lay off anybody in the federal government? Are you serious? 617-266-6868. And so many federal government workers aren't even coming into the office. They're still working from home. Most of us have to go back to the office. Why shouldn't they? Your calls next. 8:19 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. An avalanche. The last, 5 minutes while we were off air, the text line, emails, messages, avalanche of listeners, people, Kuhner country. Jeff, I was laid off this time. I was laid off then. I got laid off twice here. So many of you are saying, I got laid off. I can't tell you how many times, Jeff. Or my spouse did, or whatever. It wasn't nice, wasn't pleasant, didn't like it, didn't enjoy it, of course. But we got another job. What's so special about federal government bureaucrats? I agree. Do you? 617-266-6868. Rick in Waltham. Thanks for holding, Rick, and welcome.
Morning, Jeff.
Hi.
This is my first time calling. I long time listening.
Welcome, Rick. Welcome.
Thank you. Jeff, I've been listening. I was in the hospital for over a month, and I just got released again yesterday, and I listened to the show for the first time in a long time. And I heard you talking about the judges just a while ago, the remedy. And what I would do is sue them and have them be responsible for what the payment. So if hiring 10,000 government employees cost $100 million, then they owe us $300 million because you sue for triple damages. So now, I think they'll be hesitant to perform these crazy decisions because they're on the hook, and the money's due and payable immediately. And if they, protest or they sue, the IRS does the collections. I don't know if you've ever had the IRS on your back. If you don't make the payments, they come after you and they charge you interest like, I don't know what it is these days, but it's probably like 10-20% every month or every year. So if these judges are fighting it, they're basically losing everything. They lose their house, they lose their pension, they lose all their money. And if they still owe money, they're liable for the rest of their lives. So I think they'd think twice about making these stupid decisions that hurt the country.
Rick, I think your idea is a really interesting one. And, I understand what you're saying, Jeff, financially punish them, right? Like, make them pay for what they're forcing all of us to endure. I agree. There's got to be a punishment. And if people don't want to punish them financially, okay, disbar them. Okay, it costs you your job. Bye. In other words, there's got to be some kind of consequence to this. I like your idea. Make it financial. I'm with you. But I'm just saying, Rick, okay, if people don't want to go that far, fine. Have them disbarred. Like, you can't keep doing this. And, Rick, look, I respect judges. I do. I respect the Supreme Court. I think it's an incredible institution, an invaluable institution. So it's not like I don't respect judges or the judiciary. Quite the opposite. But, there are some decisions where you go, it's close. I disagree, but okay, I can see the other side. You know what I mean? Okay, it's a little bit of a gray area. I agree, but I can see where someone would disagree, or the opposite. Well, I kind of disagree with that ruling, but okay, reasonable people can disagree. I get that. You're talking about absolutely constitutionally outrageous rulings and decisions. I mean, it's just, it's like, really, what's next? No, really. It's like a judge saying, Trump can't make peace with Russia and Ukraine. Really, I'm serious. It's like, no, you're not allowed. No, you're not allowed. You're like, but you can't tell him that. But why can't I? I mean, it's that kind of level of when I say constitutionally illegitimate, and they're out of control. And the problem ultimately is this. It's Democrat presidents, for the most part. Okay, there are a few Bush judges, they're the same. But for the most part, it's Democrat presidents, when they appoint judges to the judiciary, these aren't people who care about the Constitution. Remember, they've sworn an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. They're political activists masquerading as judges. They're Democrat activists. It would be, think of this, putting AOC on the bench. She'd be like, are you crazy? Well, that's what they do. That's what most of these so-called quote-unquote judges are. It's Elizabeth Warren or Bernie, but you just put them as a judge. Do you think they care about the Constitution? No. They don't care. This guy doesn't even hide it. This guy Alsup. Even in his ruling, he even admits this is what's so insane. That's why he's going to get destroyed at the Supreme Court. He goes, well, I have to say, though, the president does have the right to fire people. I just don't like the way he did it. I don't like the reasons Office of Personnel Management, Human Resources. So they got these emails from the Office of Personnel Management. And he said, I don't like the reasons that the Office of Personnel Management gave. That's not your business, whether you like the reasons or don't like the reasons. So what I'm saying is, even in his absurd judgment, please look up the story. Don't take my word for it. He even says, well, no, of course the president has the right to fire people. Well, what are you doing with your decision? Like, what are we talking about? So we're going to split hairs on you don't like what was in the email that they got when they got fired? What, it should have said reduction in force instead of bad performance review? Maybe they got bad performance reviews. They're on probation. This is what I'm talking about. This is such a bad decision. It is so blatantly, nakedly unconstitutional. You're right. There needs to be serious consequences. Either they're disbarred, they're impeached, they lose their jobs, they lose their benefits, or they get fined, as you put it, and have them be on the hook for the costs that they're imposing all of us. But this has got to end. Really, they're trying to paralyze the president. No one elected them. No one. Agree, disagree, all of your calls. Next. on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, just to put a final bow on this whole thing. Eric on Messenger makes an absolutely superb point. He says, Jeff, we need to start launching federal investigations into these judges, these rogue, out-of-control, activist judges who think they can legislate from the bench, who think that they control the executive branch and usurp their authority and their power. And he says you'll find I bet you'll find financial corruption, financial ties, money ties to powerful Democrats. There's no question. There's no question. And let's just stand back objectively. Who are we kidding? I mean, this is so obvious. You know, as Mel in New York would say, even Ray Charles could see it. This is a Clinton judge. This is the hand of Hillary Clinton. I guarantee you, I'd want to subpoena the phone records or the email accounts. I guarantee you this judge was almost ordered by Hillary. Take Trump down. I don't care how ridiculous, how outrageous, how illegal and illegitimate your ruling is. You block him and you take him down. And it's not just this judge. Who was the one that came up with the Russia collusion hoax? Hillary. Who was the one behind the Steele dossier? Hillary. Perkins Coie, the law firm. It was all Hillary. Who was the one that got Mark Elias to go to state after state during 2020 to help Joe Biden steal the election from Trump? Sending Elias to Pennsylvania, to Michigan, to Wisconsin, to Georgia, where they illegally, unilaterally, unconstitutionally changed the laws of those election laws of those states to favor Biden and hurt Trump. It was Hillary Clinton. Mark Elias is a Hillary Clinton lawyer. So in terms of the resistance to Trump, so much of this is coming from Hillary and the Clinton camp because she never got over the fact, because she's a vindictive witch. You know what I really want to say, but I don't want to say it. Okay? She's nasty, she's vicious, and she's vindictive. She never got over the fact and never forgave Trump for beating her in 2016 and denying what she said was her rightful place to the presidency. So you have judges who really are pawns of very powerful Democrats who abuse their power and authority. As I said, they're basically fascists in black robes. This is judicial tyranny. Who now want to tear down Trump and tear down his ability to govern as a way to resist, to obstruct, and to block. Enough is enough. Trump, if you're listening, Trump's people, if you're listening, ignore this ruling. Ignore it. And tell them, you made your ruling, you enforce it. And let them appeal and take it to the Supreme Court. Agree, disagree, 617-266-6868. Steve in Wakefield. Thanks for holding, Steve, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff. Thanks for taking the call. So I have a few different points, but we'll start with validating your assertion that these are all activist judges. So I'm a vendor rep to the Department of Health and Human Services. So I get a copy of every executive order and judge's decision that is blocking Trump's progress. And at the first of the week, I got one that, just blew me away. So I had to look up, who is this judge? So I looked up this judge, and he's a graduate of Providence College with a major in community service and a minor in black studies. He then went on to become an advocate for the homeless in the Tenderloin district of San Francisco, which obviously are aware, is a total disaster zone. So he was appointed as a federal district judge by Biden in October of 2023. So he's been a judge for 15 months. But with a stroke of a pen, he's blocked the Trump administration from blocking funding to physicians and healthcare providers who perform gender-affirming care on kids under 19 years old. And I just was appalled that this guy in a little corner of Maryland has the capacity or the capability to undermine the will of the people as demonstrated in November's vote. So that was my first point. The second issue is that I'm in sales, and you're in media, and both of us have to perform, or guess what? We'll be colleagues together at Arby's, right? You need audiences, and I need to perform. And I find it interesting. I looked this up as I was driving. Don't tell the cops. But over the course of the pandemic, the federal government added tens of thousands of employees to payroll, while, as you're aware, the private sector absolutely took it on the chin. Now, there's no way that these people are delivering so well for us that it warrants continued addition of staff. I guarantee you that once the dust settles, neither you or I or your listening audience will ever feel the difference that there's less employees in the Department of Education, which, by the way, is a parent of college-age kids. Last year, under Biden's Department of Education, all of us were screwed by the FAFSA application being messed up for months and months and months. So it's, so there's proof positive that they're inefficient.
Steve, you're breaking up on us, but two absolutely outstanding points. You're dead on. You're absolutely dead on. Look, it's judicial tyranny. You've got some hack and an activist. That's what this guy is, this Maryland judge. He's an activist. That's what he is. He's a Democratic operative and activist. So put on a row, put him on a bench, and this guy can nullify the will of the people and can literally prevent the president from doing his job, his rightful, lawful, constitutional authority job that he's authorized by the Constitution to do. It's outrageous. You want to talk about a threat to democracy? There's your threat to democracy. It's an obvious threat. And, your other point, look, you're in sales. You don't deliver. You're out. If I don't deliver, if I don't show up to work every day and give you the best possible show I can give, if the ratings slip, I'm gone. I live and die by the ratings. So, and I know that. So, I don't know who these government bureaucrats think they are. And look, they've already, Linda McMahon, forgive me, the education secretary, has already let go 50%. She slashed 50% of the workforce at the Department of Education. Have you felt it? Have I felt it? Do you feel the quality of education going down? That's how much waste and fraud was taking place. Literally, every second person was let go, and nothing has happened. That's our money. That's our money. And I agree with Trump, and I agree with Linda McMahon. Get rid of the Department of Education. All that money, give it in block grants, give it to the states. Give it back to the schools, to the states, to the parents and vouchers. We can make infinite better use of it than these federal bureaucrats. Look, think about it. No country in the world spends more on education than we do. And we have, what is it now? Half, in some cases 60% of our students are not proficient in reading and math at the 8th grade level. It's pathetic. 49 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Paula in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Paula, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. How are you this morning?
I'm good. How are you, Paula?
I'm great. My knee is healing. Hopefully, I'll be able to go back to work, and then I can tell my employer what I've done in 4 hours that I work. I won't have to wait a week because they see what I do because I'm a hard worker. I'm from the old school. But, Jeff, let me just ask you one question. These employees that have been let go on probationary, they would eventually become union workers under the government unions? Okay.
Yes.
Let's take a look at this. How many union workers have they lost now? And what about the union? The big fat cats aren't going to be big and fat anymore because look at all that union dues that are gone now. Just think about this. They're laying off maybe half of the workforce throughout the government. Let's just say they're cutting 50% of the workforce. That's 50% of union dues that they don't have anymore. And I'm sticking with my president and Elon because you know what? You see every day, nobody cared when my husband got laid off because of COVID. Okay? Nobody cared about him. Nobody cares when private sector workers get laid off. So where's these judges that help us? How come they're not helping us when we get laid off? Because it's, and I've always said this, 2 sets of employment rules. You've got the unions and you've got the employees at will. The unions, very rarely do you see any union employees get laid off or anything. Very rarely. But you see us get laid off all the time because we're built on merit. So these are probationary employees. When I get a job, I'm on probation, and I'm a private sector employee. They're on probation. What's the big deal here, Judge? If you can't perform your duties and you're going to step over the line, it's time that you get disbarred, you are removed from the bench, all of them, and you're licensed, and again, disbarred, because you're stepping into the executive branch. You're not the executive branch, you're the judicial branch. You're the part that upholds the laws. You interpret the laws. You don't rewrite the laws. And that's what they're all doing. Because, Jeff, I'm going to tell you quickly, I have a case still at the New Hampshire Supreme Court over my election from the Board of Ed. And it was stolen. But I'm going to tell you, Jeff, when you watch these lawyers and what they do, you started at Superior Court, and you watch how they don't uphold the laws. They don't understand the RSAs. They don't understand the laws. And we, who come in and fight for ourselves, we understand the laws more than they do. And they went to law school. What's wrong with this system now? It is so backwards. Right is wrong and wrong is right. And
well, Paula, the answer to your question is this, and you're on fire, by the way. It's the politicization of our legal system. See, everything is becoming, our intelligence agencies politicized, our media politicized, universities politicized, Hollywood entertainment politicized. Frankly, now even much of sports. You know, you saw it with Black Lives Matter and the NFL, the kneeling and during the national anthem. And so everything has become politicized. Now, even our judiciary branch, the judicial branch, even the legal system now, it's completely politicized. And so you have people, that's why I thought it was the previous caller was a brilliant call. He said, you know, Jeff, that rinky-dink judge that no one ever heard of, who now is trying, and remember, Trump campaigned that he was going to end so-called gender reassignment surgery, okay, sex change operations for children, whatever, people under the age of 19. That was part of his mandate. So he comes in, bang, signs an executive order saying, no, I ran on this, and no, we are not, you are not allowed to have children, have a sex change operation, have genital mutilation until the age of 19. The answer is no. It will be illegal. Now, that judge is not a judge. He's not a legal trained judge. It's a hack. It's a hack. He's a community organizer. That's what he is, like a la Obama. So he doesn't care about he doesn't know the Constitution. He doesn't know the Bill of Rights. He doesn't know precedents, legal precedents. He has no understanding, nor does he care about the law. He looks at something from a radical left-wing, pro-Democrat political lens. Trump bad, kill it. That's it. That's it. And then make up a reason. Just, put window dressing and try to justify the unjustifiable. And look, Paula, you're completely right. What we now have to solve is how do we deal with these judges? Because this is their last obstacle. They don't have anything more after this. So if we can break these judges, then the Democrats are done. They're finished. And I don't know if it's impeaching them. I don't know if it's disbarring them. I don't know if it's just taking it to the Supreme Court and having the Supreme Court rule definitively once and for all and neutering these judges. But we've got to start purging the judicial branch of these people, because these are out of control, activist, rogue, left-wing judges. And they're dictators. They think they can override the will of the people. And they can't. They can't nullify an election. And they certainly can't cripple and paralyze a president. If these rulings are upheld, then President Donald Trump's presidency is finished. In fact, the executive branch is finished. It can't function. If a president can't do anything because some judge in San Francisco or some corner of Maryland or whatever says, nah, I don't think you can do that. You've put the president in a straitjacket. And if you put the president in a straitjacket, you put the country in a straitjacket. So I'm with you all the way, Paula. We've got to deal with these judges now. You want to talk about a real threat to democracy? You want to talk about a real crisis? This is a real crisis and a real threat to democracy. This guy's a bum. This guy Alsup is a bum. In the old days, I'm telling you, he'd be tarred and feathered. The founding fathers are rolling in their graves. They're like, we didn't fight a revolution for this. 617. Thank you very much, Paula. As always, very good call. 617-266-6868. And it's the whole premise of the argument. That's what's, that's the bone in my throat. As Khrushchev famously said, that's what sticks in my craw. You can't fire federal workers? What? You can't lay off federal workers? Are you serious? So what are they now? The last protected class? I'm sorry. Did I miss the memo? Hold on. Is this the 11th commandment? Did I miss this when Moses came down with the burning bush? Thou shalt not fire a federal government bureaucrat? Somehow, this is verboten? And again, really, they're just making Elon's point. Look at the waste. Look at the duplication. Look at the fraud. It's not just where the money's going and how it's being paid to all these crazy groups. Look, you've got 8, 10 people in a department. You cut it to 4 or 5. It works even better. Now, it's not just that we pay their salaries. We're basically paying them to do nothing. Gold-plated pensions. Gold-plated health care. You got to see the benefits they receive. And this is permanent until they die. And, this is what, and that's why Elon said, look, we can easily save $1 trillion. We can almost wipe out the budget deficit. And these idiots, and notice what they've done now. Last point, because I want to go back to the phones. Notice what they've done. If you fire a federal bureaucrat, that's now a cut to Social Security, or a cut to Medicaid, or a cut to Medicare, or a cut to food stamps. No, you just fired a federal bureaucrat. That's all you did. It's not affecting the actual money or the checks, they say, for Social Security. It doesn't affect a single check that goes out. It doesn't affect the health care that you get for Medicaid or Medicare. There's as much money now as ever. In fact, as Trump and Elon keep saying, the more waste and fat we cut, guess what? There's more money for Social Security. There's more money for Medicare. There's more money for Medicaid. So if you want to save these programs, you should be supporting Doge. Never mind defending the taxpayer. No, these are bureaucrats who've had a cushy job for a very long time. And it's a fraud. They pretend to go to work. They pretend to be essential. They pretend to be... Now, again, I'm not saying there aren't excellent federal government workers. Of course. And as Elon said, we want to keep them. You need civil servants. You got to have people working in government programs. Who's going to... They got to be administered. But we want the best. We want the workers. We want people who are productive. People who come into the office and put in a full day's work. We don't want the fat and the layabouts and the deadbeats. And so that's their argument over and over again. They go like, you should be thanking us. We're saving you your money. 617-266-6868. And I'm sorry, no job is sacrosanct. Even the president's job. I mean, I know Trump is term limited. I get that. But, you know, if a president doesn't perform in his first term, what happens? He's out. The electorate gives him the boot. He loses re-election. So what I'm saying is, if the president's job is not for life, and the president can be fired, and certainly in the private sector, all of us have been subject to layoffs and firings, and whether they're valid or not, it happens. Company comes in and says, look, we've got to cut, 20%, or else we're going to go under. People get laid off. Many times even good workers get laid off. That's life. They find another job. It's not the end of the world. But with the swamp in Washington, I've never seen... And then you have the idiots in the media. Cancer research. Children with cancer are going to die. People are going to go hungry. The elderly, they won't get their Social Security. Again, fear-mongering, hysteria, panic porn, lie after lie after lie. Firing bureaucrats is not cutting anything in terms of Social Security or Medicare or Medicaid. It doesn't cut benefits. If anything, it saves the benefits. Hello? 617-266-6868. Agree, disagree. Tommy in West Virginia. Thanks for holding, Tommy, and welcome.
Hey, good morning, Jeff. Very good program. Now, as far as a president disobeying the Supreme Court, sometime in 23, the Supreme Court told the Biden administration, no, you cannot forgive student loans in the executive branch. What did Biden do in January of 25? Disobeyed the Supreme Court. So if Trump's people are listening, they should bring up that fact. Now, as far as people getting fired, I'm a union member. I remember during the 80s, up in J, Maine, International Paper had a strike. And because of Ronald Reagan's executive decision of PATCO, if you honored the strike and your union lost, you lost your job forever. And I, as an electrician, I work with electricians that honored that strike at J, Maine. One guy, his nickname was Skeeter. I worked with him up in Mattawask, Maine, and Fraser Paper on a shutdown in 1989. He was fired from his job after 23 years. I did not hear the National Public Radio crowd back then going on hand-wringing about paper workers where the unions were busted back then. They were not sympathetic to union workers. And I distinctly remember that a-hole on Boston Public Radio saying, well, you know, I don't think it's right that someone should get paid $10 an hour for sweeping the floor at International Paper. I mean, let's be real here. Okay, so, no, I don't want to hear it. And as far as these federal workers, yes, it's top-heavy. Nobody breaks a sweat, and the retirement benefits they have is lavish. And to make this argument that, no, we have to keep federal bureaucrats to stimulate the economy, I'm sorry, we don't build battleships in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and sink them into the ocean to keep members of the machinist union working. That's just ridiculous. That's a red herring argument. So, you know, yes, Elon Musk, I think he's doing marvelous work along with his college kids that, hey, there's a lot of duplication here. And anytime, and if I hear this argument from progressives, well, government doesn't work the same way as the private sector. Well, you know something? Maybe it should, because when Ronald Reagan took office, we were $997 billion deficit. We're now almost on the verge of $37 trillion. And at some point, God forbid, if we ever renege on our loan commitments, it'll be worse than 1929. And somebody needs to wake up and smell the coffee. And the American people clearly voted for Donald Trump. And he made it perfectly clear what I'm going to do. I'm going to seal the border. The border has been sealed. Illegal crossings are down 95% now. And I was told by progressive idiots on talk radio that, well, the only way we're going to solve the immigration problem is we have to have a bipartisan bill. Well, what they didn't tell you in that bill is they were going to allow 2,500 illegals per day to cross the country. Multiply that by 365 days a year. That's not solving the immigration problem. Our immigration problem is, you idiots, is we have too many illegals that we've allowed to stay in this country. And there's plenty of people throughout the world that are willing to go through the background checks, willing to get the vaccinations, willing to jump through the paperwork to come here for a better life. Not some slob from a third world country who says, what's in it for me? I'm done.
Tommy, I got to tell you, one of your best calls. Really. Tommy, I got to ask you very quick. I mean, you mentioned Reagan, and you're dead on. Remember when Reagan fired all those air traffic controllers? Do you remember that? They all went on strike, and he said, get back. I want you back at work. And they said, no, okay, you're gone. This guy didn't fall. I mean, we're talking air traffic controllers. You know, I mean, you want to talk about an essential job. Said, okay, you're all gone. And we'll rehire another batch. Right? So, Tommy, you know, it's been done over and over and over again. And I've got to ask you, Tommy, look, you're a union guy. You've worked hard your whole life. Why is it that if you work for the government, somehow your job is sacrosanct? But as you mentioned, Tommy, you work in a paper mill or I don't care where, a construction site, wherever, whatever it is. They can, you know, Tommy, they could lay you off, no problem. But you lay off one of those fat cat bureaucrats, it's the end of the world. Why do they think that just because you have a government job, somehow you're unfireable?
And I will tell you, as an electrician, I've worked in 13 states and 1 U.S. territory. And the first time I had a lengthy layoff was August of '89. I went from Mission Hill, Boston, up to Madawaska, Maine, back to Boston for about a year and a half, got laid off, was looking at a long, lengthy unemployment. I went to Wisconsin, West Virginia, Washington State, Alaska, California, Oregon, Idaho. I can't think of them all now. But the point being, that was a decision on my part. I was single, no kids. I lived out of a suitcase in my 30s and 40s. All right. And in a moment's notice, I could realize, hey, this job's come to an end. You got to go back to the union hall. Did I sit there crying in a white fluffy towel? No. It's like, hey, I knew about this when I got into it, but I also retired at age 58. Okay. So I think I've done pretty well, and I'm very thankful the career path that I chose. But the point being is that there was no security. There is no seniority in the construction unions. They can fire or hire whoever they want for no reason whatsoever. But the wages are excellent. The benefits are fantastic. But you also have to work. If you don't work, you're not going to be paying into your retirement. But this sense of entitlement with these people is unbelievable, and we don't need the double amount of bureaucracy. And the other point being is that with Ronald Reagan, with an executive order, I remember I voted for Bill Clinton, and Bill Clinton made it clear that when I get in office, I'm gonna overturn that executive order from Ronald Reagan that was so illegal to the union workers of this country. Well, did Bill Clinton ever overturn that executive order? No. Did Barack Obama ever overturn that executive order? No. And Barack Obama told the AFL-CIO the summer of 2008 at a convention, the first thing I will do as president is renegotiate the NAFTA trade agreement. What did Barack Obama do in 8 years, you progressive morons, about NAFTA? Not an effing thing. What did Donald Trump do? He campaigned on that. And here he is standing up to Canada saying, listen, you're paying 1.3% of your GDP for defense. You're a member of NATO. You got to pay a 2%. And we have all kinds of tariffs on our goods if we try to sell them into Canada. And somehow we're the bad guys? No, I'm sick of this BS. I wish I could drop some bad words on the air, but you'd get fined and I'd get cut off.
Tommy, have a nice weekend. Have a nice weekend, my friend. Couldn't have said it better myself. Look, and I think the magic word was entitlement. And I want to throw this quick log on the fire. How much time left, Mike? Okay, so very quick. I only got 30 seconds. There's a sense of entitlement. These government bureaucrats think that they're entitled to a job. And I'm also noticing among some of the younger workers, okay, what is it, Gen Z, or like they come in the private sector, not public, private. And somehow like getting fired is the end of the world. Like they think, you have a job and it's yours for life. Like they're entitled to a job. You're not entitled to a job. 668-68 is the number. Okay, a couple lines are open if you want to jump on. Let me throw two super quick, very quick logs on the fire, as I like to say. Number one, do you think as a country we've changed in terms of our culture, our outlook, our approach to work? And what I mean by that is, for most of our history, people never, no one ever felt entitled to a job. No one ever felt like the boss owes me a job. My employer owes me a job. And once I get this job, it's mine for life, like a sinecure. It's just, like I said, like you're part of the new aristocracy. Like it's an inheritance that's yours by divine right, by birthright. So I always looked at it as you're very fortunate to have a job. A lot of people don't have jobs. Most people around the world are poor. A job, pays you. It pays the bills, helps you, get by, live. You can feed yourself, feed your family, pay your rent, put a roof over your head, put clothes on your back. To me, I've always been very grateful to have a job. And I've always understood that a job is just that. It's a job. Now, of course, if it's a good job and you love your job, hey, of course, the longer the better. But nothing lasts forever. And so I've always understood that every job is temporary. Now, you do have cases like my dad. My dad was an exception. He worked nearly 50 years at his company. So he started in his early 20s and all the way, he retired in his early 70s. It was Parkinson's. Eventually the Parkinson's, he just couldn't continue. But he was the exception that proves the rule, which is, my dad always said this. He said, I'm very lucky that I had a very stable company and that I was very good at my job and they considered me indispensable at my job. But I can't tell you dozens and dozens of times my dad would come home and say, oh, yeah, they fired this guy, or oh, they laid off this guy, or, someone at work. And he always worried, could be me. Could be me. That's why he always made sure he came to work on time, he worked hard, he gave it the best he had every single day. And, fingers crossed, and you pray to God, and you hope, they don't fire you. That eventually, they don't let you go. So this idea that somehow, as Tommy in West Virginia said, this sense of entitlement that you're seeing now, like these workers in the education department, I've been here 15 years. How dare they let me go? So what? Because you've been there 15? That means what? You got to be there another 15? Are you serious? So what is this? A lifetime appointment now? What are you, the Supreme Court? So no, I'm sorry. You're not entitled to a job. And what I'm noticing, especially millennials and Gen Z in particular, they go, when I say they're snowflakes, they melt down whenever one gets laid off or fired or whatever. They're crying, they're hysterical, as if they'll never get another job again. But not just that, they act like they've been personally betrayed. Like someone, this is my job. What do you mean it's your job? You don't own it. And it's this sense of entitlement that permeates everything. The employer asks them to do certain things. Nah, I don't do that. I'm telling you, they won't, they won't get coffee. They won't work past certain hours. They got to have their 1 hour lunch break. They've got to have their coffee breaks throughout the day. You wouldn't believe this. They have to work from home. Now it's no, we're going to work from home. That's another issue with these federal workers. As Elon and Trump pointed out, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of them are all still working from home. Nearly 5 years after the pandemic, after COVID. And they act like they're entitled to work from home. And they're saying, and we're finding out they're not doing anything at home. They've basically been used to walking around in their pajamas all day and watching Jerry Springer and eating Doritos. And so when they said, okay, we just want you to come back to the office. In the private sector, everybody's coming back to the office. Nope. Well, if you're not going to come back to the office, obviously you're not that indispensable. Obviously you don't love the job that much. And this is what I mean. They're entitled to work from home. Well, you're not entitled to work from home. Now, maybe some jobs, they allow you to work from home. To me, that's a very nice perk. You telecommute, you don't have to battle traffic. It's a nice perk to work from home. Okay, but it's a perk. It's a perk. It's a privilege. You don't have a right to work from home. And this is what I mean. This sense of it's their job. You owe them. No. You're lucky to have a job. And you better work your ass off to keep the job. Agree, disagree, 617-266-6868. Gardner in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Gardner, and welcome.
Hey, thanks for taking my call, Jeff. I really appreciate it. I'd like to touch base again on the great points that you and so many of the callers were bringing up about the separation of powers. And one of the things that comes back to me is, of course, basic civics class. We've got the three branches. The executive branch is supposed to handle things, and they all swear oaths to the Constitution. And if one of the members of a branch finds that there is something unconstitutional, say the president, then the president is not supposed to execute a statute that the legislature has passed that he believes is unconstitutional. If they had passed a statute that said, go arrest every Japanese person and put them into a corral.
Mike, boy, I got to tell you, man, You love that button. I'm like, boy. All right, so I got a hard break here, Gardner. Hey, Mike is really cracking the whip here. So please hang on. I'm going to come right back to you. Don't touch that dial. Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer, 617-266-6868. Okay, we're going to go right back to your calls. But first, joining us now, as she always does at this time, the co-founder, CEO, president of Kelly Financial Services. And yes, that is her beautiful name, Kelly. Kelly, how are you?
Good morning, Jeff. I am good. Major life events like selling a home, taking Social Security, withdrawing from retirement accounts, or even unexpected healthcare costs can all impact your retirement taxes. At Kelly Financial, our advisors can help you prepare for these milestones. They can create a bucket strategy to enable you to manage tax-efficient withdrawals and keep more of your hard-earned money where it belongs, with you. We have a free investor guide that might help. It's called Tax Strategies for Retirement. Buckets create tax choices, which explains how dividing your assets into tax-free, tax-deferred, and taxable buckets will help you manage withdrawals wisely. For the guide or for a free consultation with a Kelly advisor, give us a call or email Kelly at kellyfinancial.org. Jeff, I will continue this conversation with our Kelly advisors tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. on Safe Money Strategies Radio. Do tune in. We also have a new master series coming up in April, so do reach out for more information. Jeff, have a wonderful weekend, and happy birthday to Ashton.
Thank you, Kelly. Have a wonderful weekend. Please give my best to everyone at Kelly Financial. Kuhner Country, if you want to get a free copy of their investor guide or make a free retirement consultation with a Kelly advisor, call 888-800-1881, 888-800-1881, or you can actually email Kelly herself personally, Kelly at kellyfinancial.org. That's Kelly at kellyfinancial.org. All right, let's go right back to Gardner in New Hampshire. Gardner, you were building up to an absolutely brilliant point about the inherent separation of powers, checks and balances within our constitutional system, and that these rogue judges are now destroying and wrecking that. Please pick up where you left off.
They've been great supporters of you for so long, and they're very patriotic folks. I really appreciate those folks. So we have the separation of powers, and it's not the greatest character of them all, but if you take Andrew Jackson as an example, the Supreme Court ruled against Andrew Jackson's attempts to do certain things, and he said they have made their decision. Now let them try to enforce it, because the enforcement side of things is the executive branch, and the other branches don't have enforcement powers. Likewise, and I'd like to draw this over into another contemporary issue, as the president embarks on his tariff matters, he actually shouldn't be doing that unilaterally in the executive branch either. The legislative branch is supposed to be the branch that issues the tariffs. The executive branch cannot do it unilaterally. That's a usurpation of the legislative branch, and all revenue bills are supposed to originate in the Congress. So what Donald Trump is doing regarding these tariffs is patently unconstitutional, even if people claim, well, Congress gave him the power to just unilaterally issue tariffs. No, incorrect. Absolutely incorrect. They are constitutionally prohibited from handing over any of their enumerated powers. So that's something that I think I'd like to just add to the conversation, because it contextually, historically, and I think ethically, it's something to also bring up and keep in mind.
You know, Gardner, look, I'm someone who my whole life I've been against the imperial presidency. To me, I think you're right. I think not just on the tariff issue, on so many issues, I think Congress has abdicated its constitutional responsibilities and its constitutional powers. And they've done it both to the president and to the judiciary, to the judicial branch, to the judiciary. And I agree with you. And what we're now seeing is a shrinking Congress, a weakened Congress, and a surging judicial branch where you have these activist judges who literally think they're both Congress and the president. They think they can rewrite laws, legislate from the bench, or, when they feel like it, block the president when he's clearly exercising his authority as the head of the executive branch. Gardner, on this point, am I wrong?
Well, I'll add this. If you look at the Constitution, the word immigration is not in the Constitution. It was not until 1875 with a ruling called Cheelung v. Freeman that the Supreme Court essentially invented a federal role over immigration. It was a state issue. And Thomas Jefferson and James Madison both mentioned it in 1798 during the Alien and Sedition crises. So this is the sort of thing that, again, brings up a very, very bad precedent that was set just like Roe v. Wade. So it folds in a lot. So if we actually look at immigration, that's actually supposed to be a state issue, a federalist issue, and the judges in that case usurped the power of the states. So it works both in the different branches of the federal government and it works on the federalist side. And I hope people will be open to looking at that. I've had conversations with Pat Buchanan and Tom Tancredo and J.D. Hayworth about this, and they all agree when I go through the syllogisms. Well, you're right. The only way that they can address this is either declare war against some sort of invading nation or issue letters of marque and reprisal if the people crossing the border are not officially in the uniform of a foreign nation state. But these are all things that are lost, unfortunately, historically, as people get very ramped up about what's happening on the ground and the current status of things. And so for me, even if I might not be able to change things, I try to look at these things historically and say, well, what's the closest I can get, honestly, to what the founders actually wanted? And even if I can't change anything, at least I've informed myself of these things.
Interesting. Very interesting. Gardner, thank you very, very much for that call. I really appreciate it. 617-266-6868 is the number. This issue now, in terms of these rogue judges, is to me a very simple issue. Who rules in America? We the people, through our elected representatives, and in this case, Donald Trump is our elected president of the United States, or activist judges, essentially fascists, judicial tyrants in black robes. That's the issue. Is a judge a king? Is a judge a monarch? Is a judge, in many ways, a de facto dictator? And what liberals are trying to tell us is, yes, that a no-name judge in San Francisco, take this guy Alsup, can literally tell the president he can't fire people who are on probation, by the way. And in the probation agreement that federal workers are given, they're told explicitly you can be, remember, the first year you're on probation, you can be let go, you can be laid off, you can be fired any day, any time, for any reason. Any reason. And yet he's telling Trump he has no business firing these thousands and thousands of probationary federal employees, and now he's got to rehire them? I'm sorry, who died and made this guy God? So that's the issue. It's literally judicial tyranny versus the will of the people. You know what side I'm on. What side are you on? Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer, 617-266-6868. So, yeah, just off air, Sandy was telling me, Jeff, now that Ashton is, he's turned 15 today, it's his birthday, You know what that means? I'm like, no, what does that mean? She goes, well, he's going to get a learner's permit. He's going to learn how to drive. I'm like, please don't remind me, because he keeps telling me all the time, Dad, I'm going to be 15. You know, he's already bothering me about a car. He's already bugging me about a car. He goes, so Dad, what kind of a car are you going to get me? I go, get you a car, Ashton? Like, I can't breathe, Ashton. Like, I think I'm choking. Ashton, please. We're not getting you a car for a while, okay? Like, relax. What do you think? I'm an ATM machine. 6-1. Yeah. I go, Ashton, you're starting to sound like a Democrat, for God's sake. What do you think? It grows on trees? Money doesn't grow on trees. 617-266-6868. But let that go. Heather in Rockland. Thanks for holding, Heather, and welcome.
I just wanted to answer. Thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure.
Wanted to answer your question. I think the workplace has dramatically changed, and even since COVID, I think it's changed. It's just not the same, and I feel like what was I going to say? That it's, you know, I think, like my mother always said, back in the day, people, like when you go to work, the people actually cared about you. It's not so much that anymore. It's just you go, you put your time and you're basically a number. And I feel like that's even more so now since COVID.
I agree. No, Heather, I completely agree. And I would just add this, and you tell me what you think of it. I don't want to say any names or anything, but this was maybe just before COVID. It was just before COVID. There was a woman, nice woman. I mean, really, nothing against her personally. Very nice, always nice to me, very polite. She was about 29, 30, maybe 28 on the young side. If I'm off, it's by a year or two, but 28, 29, 30-ish. And I began noticing this. She started to come to work wearing pajamas. I mean, all day. I mean, they were fresh pajamas, as long as she just rolled out of bed with the pajamas you slept in. But they were pajamas. And then I noticed also she had a security blanket, like a little blanket. And I'm like, why? I asked somebody, I said, why is she walking around with a security blanket? And they said, well, because if you say something to her that she finds offensive, she will cry. And she uses the security blanket to comfort her. And I'm like, this is a 30-year-old woman going to work in pajamas? And she needs like a child, like a little security blanket? And apparently it's true. If you, this is what I was told by her superior. Her superior, we were just talking, and he said, no, he goes, this generation, he goes, I don't know what we're going to do with them. He goes, literally, I say, this was a mistake. You need to do this. Just that I said this was a mistake. Or, no, you did that wrong. I need you to do it like this. To say wrong or mistake. And he started to imitate this person. He was like, what? What did you say? What? And he goes, then you're like a psychiatrist. He goes, you're literally spending several hours. The woman is crying with the security blanket in her pajamas. And you're like, you're a good person. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean you're completely incompetent at your job. It just means you've got to learn to fix these mistakes. And the point he was trying to make is, I don't know if we can socialize these people in terms of the workforce. And he said, look, we're still going to be okay. I'll never forget this. These words stay with me now. What was it, 6-7 years ago? They've stayed with me and they'll always stay with me. He said, I think we're going to be okay as long as they work for us. Meaning like they're, you have people our generation running things. But he said, I don't know what's going to happen when they begin to be the managers. When they begin to run companies. When they begin to make the decisions. When they're in their 40s and 50s. He goes, I don't know how this country is going to survive. And it's not just a one-off. I'm getting more, I see it more often, and people are telling me about it. They go, Jeff, they come in pajamas. Or they come in like they just rolled out of bed. Or you tell them the most simple thing. No, you didn't file it. No, can you not file like I need you to file it like that. And they start crying. Or they run to human resources and say this is harassment. And you're stunned. You're like, what harassment? I just said that was a mistake. I need you to do it this way. And they're so brittle. They're so insecure because they've been so coddled their whole life. This is the generation everybody gets a trophy. Everybody. And no matter what you do and no matter what you say, you have to be validated. Like literally, if you say you're a turtle, you have to treat you like a turtle. You say you're a cat, then you're a cat. So that's, and also completely raised on social media. No social skills whatsoever. And it's the combination of the two. And Heather, I'm telling you, they act like you give them a job and they're doing you a favor for taking the job. And you can't even tell them when they're doing something wrong. Heather, final word to you.
No, it's funny you said about the pajamas. It's interesting because I work for a corporate law firm, and we could, wearing jeans. I mean, back in the day when I first started, you wore suits every day, and then it's business casual, and then it was like jeans on Friday. Now I can go to work in jeans anytime I want, this was since COVID, which I still find that bizarre. I mean, if I wear jeans, I dress them up a little bit and wear a jacket or something with them. But, I mean, the dress code has really gotten very casual. But I mean, the partners I work for, they still wear suits and stuff, but the staff, I mean, it's definitely much more casual than it used to be.
Give him a couple more years, Heather, you're going to start to see him in pajamas. By the way, that was a West Coast phenomenon initially. I'm not kidding. People were like, why are, people go to the grocery store and they're all dressed in pajamas, like usually younger people. And people thought that was like a weird California, Oregon, Washington thing. Now it's all over the country. I can't tell you. I go grocery shopping. I'm not saying every time, but how often I've gone grocery shopping, I swear to you. These are they're 25 years old. And they're walking around in pajamas. Hey, I'm just like, what are you can't put on clothes? And on that note, bye-bye.